Hello everyone, welcome to my new video. Today's topic is React. React is a very powerful and very popular front-end JavaScript library. It is mainly used for building user interfaces, specifically for single page applications. React mainly handles the view layer of a web uh, web app or mobile app. Um, it allows us to create reusable user interfaces components, and yeah, it's very useful. Let's see how we can create a React application. For this, before starting that, I have a badge here. I'm gonna talk about all these criteria here today. It's gonna be a long video, but I think it will be helpful for you guys who are learning React. Okay, let's get started. Here I have my VS Code opened with a empty folder. In this folder I'm gonna create a React application. Let's see how we can do that, like how we can install React. To install React, we can use Node Package Manager npm. Here I'm gonna say, in my terminal, I'm gonna say npx create react app, and I'm gonna specify the project folder as React app. So React app is gonna be my React application folder. It's gonna take some time to install React. Let's just wait for it to be done. There we go. The React is installed successfully, and first thing we need to do is we have to move to React app folder, our application folder. So I'm gonna do cd React app, and then I'm gonna say npm start. When I start the application, it's gonna open a web page. This is the page that is rendered after installing our application and running it. So how did we get this? I'm gonna show you a quick view. When we install React, it's gonna create 3 folders in node modules and public and src. The public folder has the HTML file. This HTML file has the div with id root. This div is where all the this is the place where our React component will render. What is component? React uses components to represent user interface. Think of it as a user control where we can represent like visually our data. Like this is a component is what we show on the screen. For example, this is a component that is rendered. How did it get there? So as I said, this is the place where it gets rendered. To get data here, this comes from the src folder. Src folder has index.js. Index.js is the starting point where we can specify our components and where to display them. Here it has a render method which takes the first
argument has our component, and the second one will be the location where it should be rendered in our document. So it's gonna be our id root. So it's gonna display here. And index.js is using the app component here, which is written in app.js. Let's get started and then you can understand how it goes. Before starting, I want to erase our index.js. I'm gonna show you everything from scratch. I'm gonna delete this, and then I'm gonna delete app.js. Okay, and let's get started.
Before we start building our application, let me show you a snippet that we can use, which will be helpful while building our application. To do that, let's go to the extension bar here and search for React snippets. The one here, I have already installed this. What you can do is you can just install it and restart your VS Code, and then that's it. You can use this. How to use this? Let me show a quick view here. While creating components, we usually have a structure just like, let me show you, just like this, with an import and a class and an export. To make it easier, you can just press RCC and all this code is shown on your screen. Yes, let me show a quick demo. If I say RCC and enter, you get all the code you need, the basic code, and then you can change the names or whatever you want. It's that handy. That is why we can use these snippets in our React applications. Okay, that's about this. Now let's get started building our application. Okay, let me just quickly take this out and then start. Okay, here let's open the index.js file and then say we can import React from. Why we are reacting import is because React has JSX is nothing but easy. It's a JavaScript code which is a easy way to write our HTML code. Let me show when it comes. I'll talk about it when it comes. And I'm gonna also import React DOM from React DOM, and I'm gonna say React DOM dot render. I'm gonna use this function. This function takes an element it takes two arguments. The first argument will be our component which we have to render, and the second argument will be the location where we have to render. Our location will be our HTML file with id root. So I'm gonna say get element by id from my document with id as root. When I say this, my HTML page will get this component. So what is app? App is a component which is a file called app.js. In this file, I'm gonna create my component. I'm gonna use class component for this, so I'm gonna use classes. How I can do that is I'm gonna use my snippet here, RCC. It's gonna import React, and a pure instead of pure component, I'm gonna say component. I'm gonna import component, and I'm gonna create a class app which extends component. and I'm gonna have some constructor with a super function, and I'm also gonna have a state, and this render function has a return. This return, it takes uh, it takes JSX. JSX is nothing but you can just write, say, p hello. It's a JavaScript code which we can write HTML code easily. We can just write our HTML code for return to work. There should be only one tag inside JSX. This return can only return one tag. All our code should be inside a single tag. So if you want to write one more line saying I'm gonna say another p tag with I'm React. So this doesn't work when you are returning JSX. All the JSX should be put in the round brackets and everything should be written inside a single tag. So I'm gonna take a div. I'm gonna place all my code inside div, so it can only return one tag. This is how my code should be while writing JSX and returning JSX using a component. There you go. I have my app and a basic code. Let's see if it works. I put my JSX and also the root. Okay, let me open my terminal, and I have some app is not defined. Okay, why is this? Because I'm using component app here, but I haven't imported my component. To do that, I'm gonna just say import app from let's say ./app, and now we have compiled it successfully and we can see our page. Let's see if we are getting there. Echo hello I'm React is rendered onto our page. That is that easy. Now let's see what we have covered in my batch. This is my batch. We have used our client to start application. We have started application, and also we saw how to use snippets, and the next one says able to route traffic. Okay, about this, let's say here we have just one component. What if we our application is a multi-page app where we can navigate, like route our traffic from one page to other page. For example, let me just create a folder here, say components, and inside this components I have say maybe about component, which tells about the application, and also one more component, say home, no, not home, but news.js. Okay, how to navigate from news and about, how can we do that? In React, for that purpose, we have a package called router, React router DOM package. To use that, first we need to install the package. Let's just get ahead. I'm gonna stop the server here and say npm install react router DOM. Let me quickly show you. Yes, it got installed in our JSON file, package.json file. React router DOM. Okay, how do we use it? First we need to import the React router. Import. It has functions like browser router. Let's say browser router as a router. So we are gonna make a new name for browser router. Instead of using browser router all the time, we just can use router. And I'm gonna say route from React router DOM. That's it. We just imported it and now we just have to use it. To do that, I'm gonna say I'm gonna open the component router. Inside router, I'm gonna say route with path whenever the path matches this line, it's gonna open the app component. I don't want this. I'm just gonna say slash here. So whenever the URL matches this line, it's gonna open app, and whenever you open about, if I say about here and say about, I just have to say like this, but to find this component I have to import the component. To do that, I'm gonna say import about from components. I'm gonna get about, and I also have news. To route to news, I'm gonna say route path. It's gonna be just like before, and I'm gonna say news. I'm gonna end it right here, and I'm gonna import news. Components and news, just like that. So whenever the URL finds this path, it's gonna go to this component from this folder, and whenever the URL matches this path, it's gonna go to news component, which is from this folder. That's how routing happens in React. And let me show how this works. Let me start the server. This is the app, and whenever the path says about, invalid, this is because we don't have any class inside our about file. To do that, let's just say change it to component, and inside about I'm gonna render a h1 with about text, and the same goes in news too. I'm gonna change this to component, and I'm gonna render a h1 with news text. So let's see if this is working. I'm gonna refresh this, and I'm getting both text from app and about. Why is this happening? Point to remember here is, in our routing, whenever the path matches whatever the path is here, if it matches slash, it's gonna render this, and then it's gonna also match slash with about, so it's gonna render about. So both the paths are getting rendered. To avoid this, what we have is exact. So when we say exact, only when there is slash, it's gonna render only app. So when there is slash and about, it's gonna render only about. The problem is fixed just with using exact attribute. And let's see, let's refresh, and there is only about. It's that easy to route our traffic using React, and there's a lot to learn about routing, and this is the basic routing I covered in this video. And the next one in our criteria is about differentiate between DOM and React's virtual DOM. Virtual DOM, which is an important feature in React. Let's talk about virtual DOM. What virtual DOM is. Okay, now let's talk about our fourth criteria, which is differentiate between DOM and React's virtual DOM. To explain this, I have taken a pictorial representation here. Here on the right side I have our actual DOM representation, and on the left side it is the virtual DOM representation for our actual DOM. So whenever we are updating in actual DOM, it's a slow process. Like updating actual DOM is a very slow process when compared to React's virtual DOM. Updating a virtual DOM, it's a very easy process, because updating virtual DOM, we are not updating the actual output. It's just a copy, so which is pretty faster. So how it happens? React takes our actual DOM object, and then it creates exact same copy of DOM as a virtual DOM snapshot. And whenever we are rendering, any updates that we do is actually done on the virtual DOM. This virtual DOM gets updated for every render that we do on React. It gets updated all the time, which is a fast process. And now this virtual DOM is compared with the snapshot. This snapshot is the exact copy of the DOM, so it finds the difference between the virtual DOM and the snapshot, and the difference objects, whatever the difference objects are there, only those objects get updated in the real DOM, actual DOM, which is a pretty fast process. So this way virtual DOM is very helpful for us. Now let's see how to build reusable components with and without JSX. Okay, to build reusable components, we can either do them in the same file, or we can separate the components into individual files. Let me show you in our code here. Here I have, let me close this just a second. In app.js I have class app. In the same file I can create other class, like class, let's say render text, which extends component, and inside this component I can have a render function which return JSX, or we can return either a JSX or without JSX. Will render the component. For example, first I'm gonna show with JSX. I'm gonna say h1 I am let's say I am getting rendered. This is we are creating a component using JSX, and I'm gonna use this component in our app class. I'm gonna take off this div for now. Instead of this div, I'm gonna return render text component, just like this. I'm gonna close it. So when I start my application, like if I do npm start, it's gonna open the web page. In the web page it's gonna show I am getting rendered from render text, because app is rendering only render text component. Let's see. The server is already running. Let me open my page, and I'm gonna take off about, just like that. As you can see, it says I'm getting rendered, and it is getting from the render text component. We can also create the same thing without using JSX. I'm gonna use, for this I'm gonna create a const e equal to react dot create element, and e uses create element, and this create element function, it takes 3 parameters. Like the first will be the actual like HTML tag which we are using. That will be, if I say from previous example, if I take h1, specify h1 here. If we are specifying any attributes like props, that is going to be our second argument. For here there are no attributes I'm gonna take, and the third argument will be the which we are passing inside that tag. Here I am saying getting rendered. Just like that. So create element has 3 arguments. Okay, let's see if this is working, and it compiled successfully and it says getting rendered. That's how we create elements without using JSX. We use create element from React and then specify the tag and props and the like text inside the tag h1. That's how we you build reusable components with and without JSX. And also one thing to remember here is we can also separate this into a separate file called, name it rendertext.js, and then import it into our app.js, and then we can use it. Now let's see how we can be able to render data using components. Let's go back to our code. Here the criteria says render data using components. We are using render text component, and we are displaying getting rendered data into the document. So that's how we are able to render data using components. The next one says able to pass components to other components in props. Before discussing this criteria, I want to discuss about able to pass data into components using props. As in our example, you can see we are getting data getting rendered. We are giving it explicitly, but I want to send this text from the component where we are initializing it. So first let me take off this code here, and also the return render text, let it return h1. Inside this I want to get text which is passed from here. So to pass text, I'm gonna say text equals let's say sent using props. Okay, whenever we initialize this props is sent to render text class. Inside this class we are gonna get the props. To get the props, first we need to make use of constructor which gets props whenever it is initialized. Inside this I'm gonna call super inside this I'm gonna use the state also, which is empty for now. We are gonna discuss about state in few minutes. But now, as text is sent from render text getting initialized, it is stored into props. We can make use of that object, just like saying inside JSX whenever we want to write anything using JavaScript notation, we are gonna do that inside curly braces. So I'm gonna put curly braces and say this dot props dot text. So So which is gonna get this text which is stored in the props variable here. I'm gonna use this, which refers to the class. So when I say this dot props dot text, sorry, it's gonna refer to this string. Let's see if this is working. So it compiled successfully, and let's see the output sent using props. So we sent data using props, just like that. Okay, now we have seen passing data into components using props. Now I want to discuss about able to pass components to other components in props. To do this, let's go back to our code here. So now here I'm gonna send another component as a prop in a component. So what I'm going to do here is, in render text component as a prop, I'm gonna send other component, say about.js. okay, this about.js, I'm gonna import it first. Import about from sorry about the train sound. I have a train track just nearby, so sometimes the trains come, make loud noise. Okay, now I imported about, and I'm gonna send this component, this about component, inside this render text component as a property. How I'm going to do is, I'm gonna replace this with about component. So when this is sent here, the text from about should be displayed. So I'm gonna change the text like about is rendered from render text component. Okay, that's a long sentence, but let's see if it is working. If I'm able to send a component inside a component using a prop. Okay, here is, yes, about is rendered from render text component. We got it. That is how we send a component inside another component as a property. Okay, now we have seen how to pass components to other components in props, and also able to pass data into components using props. Now we will head towards able to control component state. For this, I'm gonna show my code here, and to control state, we are gonna do that using this object, this dot state. How we can control state? First, let me show how to use state. In this example, if I have, like, if I say like there's a value, say 5, so we write key value pairs inside the state object, and I'm using key value, and the value is 5, and I'm gonna receive this value, render this value here. So to use that, what we can do is, first let me take off this and say hello for now. And also, okay, first let's concentrate here. I'm saying hello, and to send the this value here, I'm gonna say number equals, in curly braces I'm gonna say this dot state dot value. So to display this number, I'm gonna say number sent colon. In render text, I'm gonna get the text as number sent, and I have to also display the number. To get that number, it is sent as a prop, so I'm gonna receive it like this dot props dot number. Let's see if it is displayed. Number sent 5. Okay, now how can we control the state? Like how can we update this value? For example, if I have a button, say increment, whenever I press increment, it has to add +1 to the number and display the incremented value. Let's see how we can do that. For now, I'll close this and I'm gonna put this inside a div. Okay, I missed it. First, I'm gonna open and close braces. Inside brace, I'm gonna create a div and I'm gonna bring this inside the div. Okay, just like that. And now I'm gonna put a button which says increment. So whenever I click this button, it has the value here has to be incremented. How can I do that? To do that, for button I'm gonna use on click event. Here the on click should be camel case, as we are writing it in JSX. And it has to call a function. Now I'm gonna call handle click function. Now we have to write the handle click function. Just above render, I'm gonna create this function handle click, just like that. And in here I'm gonna change the value, like increment the value. To do that, I cannot say like this dot state dot value +1. We cannot do like this directly, but our React gave us a function called this dot set state, which we can use to control the state. In here I'm gonna have an object which is same as this object. This state object has a value, so I'm here changing value. So I'll take like value colon and say this dot state dot value. I want to use this value, previous value, +1. I also have something like previous prop dot value, but for now I'm gonna use this dot state dot value +1. We are not changing this value, but we are just incrementing. We are just using it and then incrementing and then storing it in the state. Okay, now we have everything. Okay, number sent and value and something is missing. Okay, now to use this function, let me show you. Let me run this and show you. If I press increment, it says set state is undefined. This is because this set state is inside handle click function. This handle click function is called from here, this dot handle click, but it doesn't know this function because we have to bind this function. To bind this function, this is something we do in React. To bind a function which we write externally, name of the function equals this dot name of the function dot bind of this. We are binding with this. So now when we say increment, it's gonna increment. That's how we control the state. In the same way, we can have decrement and one more function to handle decrement and saying this dot state dot value -1 and so on. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. That's how we control the state. Yeah, able to control the component state. Now let's move on to the next criteria, which says able to respond to events in elements like click, touch, change. We have already seen the click event in the element button element. When we click on this button, it's gonna increment. Even touch is same, but touch works in mobile devices and iPads where we can access touch. For example, if I change to touch start here, and in my app, if I can open the mobile version, and then if I touch here, it's gonna increment on touch. That's how we use the touch event. I'm gonna close this for now. And the next one says change on change. For this, I'm gonna take an input element just like this. Input type equals text and value is empty for now, and whenever I change the value in this input field, the event gets triggered. The event I'm gonna give here is on change equal to let me say this dot handle change. Let me just put them in a new line so that it's easy to see the code. Oh, okay, it's going back anyway when I save it. Okay, now I'm gonna create handle change. Handle change. Inside this, what I'm gonna do is, whenever I change the value, I want it to be displayed in a p tag. Maybe I'll take a p tag here. This dot let's create a state object key. I'm gonna say what can we say as text. It's gonna be an empty string for now. input something into the input field that has to be printed in the p tag. To do that, I'm gonna inside this function gonna say this dot set state. Okay, now I have to write something inside the state, but before that, whenever an event is triggered, that event can be passed into the function, into this function as an argument, so it can be accessed here. If I create event here, I'm gonna create a const text equals event dot target dot value. The value from here is can be accessed through event dot target dot value. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make this text get this value. So text equal to text. Let's see if this works. Okay, in here I have this input field. Okay, I did not bind my function to this. Let's just do that. This dot handle change equals this dot handle change dot bind this. Okay, after doing that, let's see if it works. Okay, it's only taking single letter. Why is that? I think we got to save this dot state dot text in here as well, because value has to take whatever changes we are doing. Hello is displayed here. Okay, let's change it. Get this down real quick, and let's say enter any value. Value entered is displayed here. Okay, enter any value. I'm gonna say good morning, and good morning is displayed here. That is how we use on change event. I think we covered click, touch and change, and we responded to the events.